Rain hit the broken glass roof like small explosions. In the middle of the empty hall, Oliver Grant walked slowly, his boots echoing on the cold floor. The light from his lantern shook in his hand. Dust floated around him like ghosts. The museum had been closed for years, yet the air felt alive, as if it was waiting for someone to open its secrets. He had bought the place for almost nothing. People said it was cursed, but Oliver didn't believe in curses. He believed in chances. He was drowning in debt, and this strange old museum was his last shot at saving his life. The walls smelled of mold and forgotten paint. Somewhere in the dark, a soft sound of metal echoed, one that didn't belong. He followed the noise past broken frames and covered statues until he saw a door locked with heavy chains. He broke them and stepped into a basement that felt colder than the world above. The smell of wet stone filled his lungs. Then his light found it, a vault door hidden behind a fake wall shining faintly through the dust. It looked untouched, but the air around it was warm. His heartbeat grew louder than the rain. He touched the steel, and it vibrated. Someone had been here. Maybe they never left. Oliver Grant had once been the kind of man who believed luck followed those who worked hard. He ran a small restoration business in South London, fixing antiques for people who had no idea what they were worth. But the market crashed, collectors disappeared, and the fire that burned through his warehouse took everything: his savings, his reputation, and the hope in his wife's eyes. Since that night, the only thing that kept him moving was a promise he couldn't break, to rebuild what he lost no matter the cost. He'd walked through every corner shop and loan office, but doors closed faster than they opened. Friends turned into voices that avoided his calls. Debt letters piled on the table like snow he couldn't shovel fast enough. When he saw the museum listed for auction, abandoned since 1945, sold as is, something strange pulled at him. Maybe it was madness, maybe it was fate, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the building was calling his name. His wife, Claire, begged him not to buy it. "You're chasing ghosts," she said, and maybe he was. But ghosts don't pay bills. The auctioneer's hammer hit the wood, and in 1 second the museum became his, along with every secret inside it. The neighbors stared, whispering about the man who bought the curse. Oliver just smiled, pretending he wasn't afraid. That night, as he stood in front of the dark museum, rain soaking his coat, he felt something shift, not in the building but inside him. The kind of shift that tells a man he's stepping into something bigger than his own life. He just didn't know yet how deep it would take him. Behind the locked door, something was already awake. The next morning, London was still half asleep under a pale fog. Oliver unlocked the museum gates, the metal squealing like a protest from the past. The air inside was colder than the street outside, heavy with the scent of old books and damp stone. He moved through the main hall, the beam of his flashlight sliding across glass cases filled with cracked bones, faded maps, and wax figures whose eyes seemed to follow him. Somewhere deep within, a soft sound pulsed, like a heartbeat hidden in the walls. He found the curator's office behind a broken door, the nameplate still there, Dr. Alistair Rowe, 1945. The room was untouched, frozen in time. Papers lay scattered across the desk, yellow and curled, covered in ink that had bled through with moisture. On one page, a phrase stood out: "The lower vault must remain sealed. The safe is not to be opened until the debt is repaid." Oliver read it twice, his hands trembling. Debt. That word followed him like a curse, even here. He opened a drawer and found a small leather notebook tied with string. Inside were sketches of the museum's basement, and a series of numbers written in neat lines, as if they were meant to be a code. The last page ended abruptly with a single word scrawled in red: Guardian. The ink was fresh, newer than the others. He felt the hair rise on his neck. Suddenly a noise echoed from below, a sharp metallic clang just like last night. It wasn't the building settling, it was movement. Someone, or something, was down there. Oliver grabbed the lantern, his breath shallow, and started toward the basement door. The lock was already open. The staircase to the basement groaned under Oliver's weight, each step colder than the one before. The air thickened, and the smell of metal grew stronger. His lantern's flame shook, throwing long shadows across the walls, where strange symbols were carved into the brick. Circles, arrows, and a date scratched deep: 1945. His breath came out in clouds. Then from the dark below came a faint whisper. It wasn't the wind, it said his name. He froze, listening. The whisper turned into a rhythm. Not words now, but footsteps. Slow, careful, coming closer. His mind tried to explain it away. But his body already knew the truth. He wasn't alone. The flame flickered out, leaving him in total darkness. Panic clawed at his chest. He struck a match, and the light revealed something that shouldn't have been there. A fresh set of muddy footprints leading straight to the vault. He followed them, the match burning down to his fingers. The vault's heavy door stood half open, revealing a thin line of golden light inside, like sunlight trapped underground. He stepped closer, the sound of dripping water echoing in the silence. On the floor, a single glove lay in a puddle, leather, small, and still wet. Someone had just been here. He turned sharply when he heard a breath behind him, close enough to feel. A figure stood in the dark corner, half hidden by the shadows. A man in a museum uniform, but the badge was old, rusted, impossible. Oliver blinked, and the figure was gone. Only the sound of slow breathing remained, somewhere deeper in the room. Then the vault door began to close by itself. The vault door slammed shut behind him, shaking the walls. Oliver spun around, pounding the steel, but it wouldn't move. His lantern fell, and the light rolled across the floor, throwing moving shadows on the ceiling. The golden glow he'd seen before was gone, replaced by dull metal and silence. His own breath echoed back at him. Somewhere in that silence he heard the faint tick of a clock, steady, deliberate, coming from inside the walls. He raised the lantern and noticed something strange. The vault wasn't empty. Crates lined the room, stamped with army insignias and dates from 1944. One was half open, revealing bundles of old currency, pounds, francs, even German marks, all wrapped in paper and sealed with wax. His hands shook as he touched them. There had to be millions here. But why would money from the war be hidden under a museum? He tore open another crate and found a photograph folded between the bills. 5 men stood in front of the same vault, their faces serious, uniforms marked with British intelligence symbols. One of them, standing slightly apart, looked exactly like Oliver. The resemblance was impossible, yet the signature below the photo read, Captain O. Grant, 1945. His mind raced. Coincidence? Bloodline? Fate? He couldn't tell anymore. He flipped the picture and found a handwritten note. The debt passes on. The words blurred as his pulse quickened. He remembered the document from the curator's office. The safe must remain sealed until the debt is repaid. Could it be connected? Was this debt more than money? Something inherited, unpaid across generations. Behind the crates, a narrow tunnel led deeper underground, carved by hand and marked with the same strange symbols. And from its darkness, the whisper returned, closer this time. Oliver followed the tunnel, the air turning colder, thicker with every step. The walls were damp, covered in strange carvings that seemed to move in the lantern's glow. He counted his breaths to stay calm. 1, 2, 3, until the rhythm broke. A faint humming filled the space, like an engine deep beneath the ground. The museum above felt miles away now. Somewhere ahead, a soft light pulsed like the beat of a heart. The tunnel opened into a chamber lined with mirrors, each one cracked in the same corner. In the center stood a pedestal covered by cloth. On it, a pocket watch ticked steadily. Too clean, too modern to belong here. The inscription on the back read, Grant must decide before midnight. Midnight. He looked at his wristwatch. 10:42. He had a little more than an hour before. What? The museum had been waiting for this moment longer than he'd been alive. He grabbed the pocket watch, and a sharp jolt ran through his hand. Visions flashed. Soldiers dragging crates, a vault ceiling shut, a man shouting, "Not yet, the debt isn't paid." Then darkness again. When he opened his eyes, the mirrors reflected something impossible. Behind him stood that same man from the photograph, eyes hollow, face pale, uniform torn by time. He raised a finger to his lips and whispered, "Don't let it open again." Oliver stumbled back, heart racing. The ticking grew louder, faster, echoing through the chamber walls like the countdown of a bomb. He didn't know if it was real or in his head, but one thing was certain. Something was set in motion, and when the last mirror cracked, the sound above him changed. The museum had started to wake. The ticking spread through the walls like a living pulse. Oliver ran back through the tunnel, but the path had changed. The bricks twisting, the turns no longer where they were. He called out, but his voice came back distorted, as if the museum itself was answering in echoes. The air smelled of smoke now, sharp and chemical, like something burning below the floor. He covered his mouth and pressed forward, chasing the faint outline of light ahead. He reached the main hall, but it wasn't the same. The glass ceiling had vanished, replaced by a fog that moved like water. Exhibits stood in different places. Some faces of wax turned toward him, others melting under invisible heat. On the far wall, a projection flickered to life, black and white film reels showing soldiers carrying boxes into this very room. In one frame, the man from the photo turned to the camera, his mouth moving silently. Then the words appeared on screen. "Grant, your hour begins now." Oliver's lantern flickered out again. The ticking from the pocket watch grew louder in his pocket, syncing with his heartbeat. He opened it. The hands spun backward, faster and faster, before stopping at 11 o'clock. A rush of wind tore through the hall, knocking over glass cases. From the shadows a sound rose, not footsteps this time, but the grinding of metal and the low hum of machinery. The floor began to shake. He stumbled toward the exit, but every door was sealed shut, bolted by invisible locks. The museum wasn't just closing. It was rearranging itself, like a maze tightening around him. He tried to shout, but his voice drowned under the roar of unseen gears. Then the whisper came again, right behind his ear. "You're running out of time." The museum groaned like a ship underwater, every wall breathing, every light trembling. Oliver pressed his back against the cold marble, clutching the pocket watch like a weapon. The ticking was constant now, faster, almost mocking. Through the fog, the film projection kept looping. Soldiers sealing the vault, soldiers dying in silence, soldiers whose faces looked more and more like his own. He whispered to himself that it was only the air, only the dark, but even lies lose power after a while. He moved toward the curator's office again, hoping to find another exit. The room had changed too. Papers flying from drawers, a typewriter clacking by itself. A single sheet slid out, words typing in real time. 1 hour left, Oliver. He stared at the line, his throat dry. 1 hour until what? The debt? The explosion? The end of him? He slammed the machine, but it kept typing, the letters growing darker, wetter, as if written in blood. If you're still here listening, imagine being trapped like that. A man surrounded by ghosts of his own name, time folding in on itself, and no door to run through. Aproveita e conta de onde você está ouvindo, cidade e país, e deixa o seu gostei para essa história continuar chegando a mais gente. Because right now, Oliver could use someone out there who's still real. He backed away as the typewriter stopped. Silence. Then the phone on the desk rang once. A deep old ring that shook the floor. He lifted the receiver with shaking hands. Static, then a voice. "Captain Grant, you opened it again. You have until midnight." The line went dead. Oliver dropped the phone. Outside, the rain stopped. The world held its breath. Oliver ran toward the main doors, his shoes slipping on the wet marble, the ticking echoing through every corridor like footsteps chasing him. He grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't move. He hit it again and again, but the metal burned his palms as if alive. The building groaned, wood snapping somewhere above. Dust rained from the ceiling. He turned back and saw shadows moving along the walls, human shapes that didn't match his own. He sprinted up the grand staircase, lantern in hand, the beam shaking across the portraits that lined the hall. Each face seemed to change as he passed, their eyes following, mouths twisting into warning. "Stop!" one of the voices shouted. It was his own, echoing from somewhere else. He froze halfway up, heart pounding. The whisper returned. Closer now, clearer. "You're not supposed to leave. You owe us." The temperature dropped so fast his breath turned white in the air. He pushed into a side room, slamming the door shut. Inside was the museum's old planetarium. The dome above cracked open to the fog outside. Stars flickered faintly across the glass, mechanical and slow, like the past replaying itself. He collapsed to the floor, breathing hard, trying to remember how any of this could make sense. Then he saw it, carved into the wall beside him. The debt must be repaid in blood or truth. The pocket watch buzzed in his hand like a trapped insect. He opened it, the hands now at 11:45, 15 minutes left. He had no idea what would happen at midnight, but something deep inside told him it wouldn't stop with him. His grandfather, his father, they'd all carried the same name, the same curse. Then from the corner of the dome a silhouette stepped forward, wearing his face but smiling. The figure stepped into the dim light, Oliver's face but older, thinner, eyes like cracked glass. His voice was steady, cold. "You were never supposed to find the vault," it said. Oliver stumbled back, heart hammering, but the air around him felt thick, heavy, like invisible hands pressing against his chest. "Who are you?" he whispered. The double smiled faintly. "I'm the one who opened it first." The room began to shift, the walls breathing in and out like lungs. Images flickered in the air, flashes of soldiers, the vault, crates of money being buried beneath fire. The older version of him stepped closer. "It was never about fortune," he said. "It was about silence. The safe holds records, proof of the men who profited from the war, men who built your life with stolen blood. Our name bought their secrets." The words hit harder than any ghost could. Oliver shook his head, refusing to believe it. But the memories started bleeding through. Dreams he'd had since childhood, flashes of uniforms, sirens, a man's voice shouting, "Protect the debt." Maybe the curse wasn't supernatural at all. Maybe it was legacy, guilt disguised as mystery. He looked at his double again. "So, what happens at midnight?" The reflection smiled. "The truth repeats, until someone pays." The ticking of the pocket watch grew louder, vibrating against his palm. He understood now. The vault wasn't just hiding money. It was holding confession. Every generation had chosen silence, sealing the proof away to protect themselves. Now the museum wanted him to decide whether the truth would die again or finally breathe. He looked up and saw his reflection vanish, leaving only his own trembling face. Then, from deep below, the vault began to open on its own. The vault door groaned open, releasing a wind that smelled of iron and dust. The light from Oliver's lantern stretched thin, dancing across stacks of papers and sealed envelopes marked classified. Inside, the war was still alive, lists of names, ledgers of stolen gold, orders signed by men who had escaped history's judgment. He realized what the debt truly meant, silence paid for in generations of guilt. His family had been keepers, not victims. That knowledge hit harder than fear ever could. He fell to his knees, breathing the stale air that had waited almost 20 years to be seen again. His mind raced. If he left the vault sealed, the curse would continue. One more grant, carrying the lie. But if he exposed it, those names could destroy reputations, maybe even lives still alive above ground. The whisper came again, softer this time. "Choose truth or choose peace." He pressed his palms to the cold floor, shaking. Oliver stood and opened the pocket watch. The hands pointed to 11:55, 5 minutes left. His reflection on the steel wall watched him move, as if judging every breath. He thought of Claire, waiting somewhere in a quiet apartment, still believing he was fixing his life, not rewriting history. "If I tell them," he murmured, "maybe the curse ends with me." His voice cracked. The whisper answered, "Then bleed the truth." He found a crate marked, "Evidence do not open." Inside, a reel of film and a tape recorder waited. He clicked the button and a voice began to play, his own but older. "If you're hearing this, the vault has been broken. Do not seal it again." His blood froze. Someone, maybe him, had already tried once before. The watch ticked louder, each sound sharper than the last heartbeat. Midnight was seconds away. The ticking filled the vault like thunder. The air shook. The papers on the floor rose as if lifted by invisible wind. The hands of the pocket watch reached 12 o'clock and stopped. For one long second, everything froze. Then the lights exploded. The entire room blazed with blinding white. Shadows of soldiers, curators, and ghosts of the past surrounded Oliver, circling him, faces twisted in anger and grief. "You opened it again," they whispered in unison. He stumbled backward, shielding his eyes. The walls pulsed with the sound of voices, thousands overlapping, demanding to be heard. Tell them what we did," they cried. The vault door slammed shut, sealing him in with the truth. He dropped to his knees, clutching the film reel to his chest. The light flickered again, showing the projection of that photograph. The 5 men, one of them his double. This time, they were turning toward him, reaching out through the screen. "I won't hide it anymore," he shouted. His voice echoed like a bell. He ripped the reel open, tossing the fragile film into the lantern's flame. The images burned, curling, releasing smoke that filled the room. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Then the ground split open beneath him. The steel beneath his feet groaned, fire and dust rising through the cracks. The whispers turned to screams. The museum above trembled, its windows shattering one by one. Every artifact cracked, every wall groaned. But the vault was empty now, its contents gone. Oliver lay on the ground, his clothes torn. The pocket watch melted in his hand. The curse had been paid, but in which coin he couldn't yet tell. Then, in the smoke, he heard one last whisper. "It's not over until you tell the world." When the smoke cleared, dawn was breaking over London. The museum's roof had collapsed, leaving only broken pillars and the echo of rain on twisted steel. Firefighters moved through the rubble, their shouts cutting through the haze. No one could explain the explosion. There were no gas lines, no electric sparks. Just a single survivor crawling out through the shattered glass. Oliver Grant, covered in dust, clutching a burned pocket watch that no longer ticked. They found him sitting on the front steps, staring at the horizon. Reporters gathered, flashing cameras, asking how he survived, what caused the blast, whether it was true that crates of money had been found beneath the ruins. He said nothing. His throat burned, his mind heavy with what he had seen. In his coat pocket he still held the reel's metal core, blackened but intact. The truth hadn't burned completely. It was still there, waiting for a decision. Claire arrived hours later, her eyes wide with disbelief. She ran to him, holding his face in her hands. "You're alive," she whispered. He wanted to answer, but words wouldn't come. The world around them felt quieter than it should, like the city itself was holding its breath. Somewhere under the debris, the last whisper of the curse still hummed through the stones. Investigators found only fragments of documents, enough to suggest the vault had once belonged to military intelligence, not the museum. They sealed off the area, promising further review. Oliver watched them close the gates again, déjà vu washing over him, history repeating, truth buried. The same silence he had sworn to end now threatened to begin again. And deep in his pocket, the pocket watch ticked once, faint but real. Days passed and the museum's ruins turned silent again. London moved on, as it always did, but Oliver couldn't. The explosion hadn't just destroyed a building, it had burned away the lies that shaped his life. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of those soldiers, the ghosts who had carried secrets heavier than gold. He wondered if he was any different. For the first time, the answer didn't frighten him. It humbled him. He stayed in the hospital under observation, reporters still waiting outside. Claire sat by his side, reading old newspaper clippings she'd found about the original curator, Dr. Rowe. The articles spoke of a missing archive, government contracts and a sealed vault never recovered after the war. The same vault Oliver had opened. "You did it," she whispered one night. "You broke the curse." He smiled weakly, unsure if breaking it meant freeing the past or repeating it. When he was finally released, he walked back to the ruins alone. The sun fell low, painting the broken glass in gold. Between the stones, he found the melted frame of the photograph, the 5 men from 1945, their faces barely visible now. He picked it up, brushing off the ash. "I won't hide you again," he said softly. His voice didn't echo. It just drifted into the morning air, carried by something gentler than wind. He decided then what had to be done. The surviving records, the film core, the names, he would release them to the press, to anyone who'd listen. The truth wouldn't be buried twice. Even if it ruined the Grant name forever, at least it would end the silence. And for the first time in his life, Oliver felt light instead of weight. A week later, the newspapers exploded with headlines. Hidden war vault discovered beneath London Museum. Documents reveal secret transactions from 1945. The truth had finally surfaced, just as Oliver promised. Reporters called him the man who bought silence and sold it back to history. He didn't care for the fame, he cared for the stillness that followed, the kind that feels clean, not empty. The city finally exhaled. He returned one last time to the site where the museum once stood. Only fragments remained, a marble column, a twisted gate, and the faint outline of the entrance he had opened that first night. The morning fog rose from the ground like memory lifting away. In his hand, the burned pocket watch ticked once more, steady and calm. He set it gently on the stone, letting it rest where the vault had been. "No more debts," he whispered. "Not for me, not for them." Claire watched from a distance, her coat fluttering in the wind. When he turned, she smiled, tears catching the light. The weight in his chest, the fear that had followed his family for decades, was gone. All that remained was peace, fragile, but real. Sometimes redemption doesn't roar, it sighs. Sometimes freedom doesn't begin with riches but with ruin. As they walked away, the watch's faint tick echoed behind them, fading with every step. Above the city, church bells rang noon and the clouds finally broke, letting sunlight spill through like forgiveness. Oliver didn't look back. He didn't have to. The truth was no longer buried. It was alive, and it had his name. If stories like this move you, stay close. There are more secrets waiting beneath the surface, so subscribe and let's keep uncovering them together.